Welcome to the Silhouettes of Success podcast with your host, successful entrepreneur, broker, and business mentor, Amber Weitzer. Because success comes in all shapes, sizes, and styles, the Silhouettes of Success podcast is shining the light on industrious women with a collection of curated conversations of intentional inspiration designed to inspire your heart, ignite your mind, feed your soul, and gift you with actionable insights directly from inspirational, everyday women who've shown tenacity, grit, and grace, having taken on the challenges in their lives and business and won. Remarkable, down-to-earth, and relatable, Amber and her guests will share with you uplifting and extraordinary real-life success stories, motivational ideas that just might help spark something within you. With the deepest desire to serve you, help you grow so you can begin to shine the light that will illuminate your very own silhouette of success. So, let's get to it.
Hello, and welcome to the Amber Weitzer podcast, Silhouettes of Success. It's a genuine privilege and joy to bring you today's Silhouette of Success. She captured my attention from our very first meeting with her energy, engaging conversation, worldly experience, and pure kindness. So please help me welcome Vicki Ganske. Hello, Vicki.
Hey, Amber. It's so good to hear your voice.
So good to hear yours. I have missed you.
Yes. And I must say that we have a extra guest. My 17-year-old cat has decided to join us. So if you hear him meow, that's probably an editorial comment on his part.
Oh, I love this. Teasing us, so that's real life. So that's why we're here. So
yes.
That's perfect.
Yep.
Well, Vicki, it is such a pleasure to have you here with us as you share your Silhouette of Success story. So thank you once again for taking time.
Okay. Well, thank you. Like I say, I'm very honored and flattered that you asked me.
Oh, it is truly a genuine pleasure, and I mean that sincerely. So let's talk a little bit about the early shaping and help illustrate your background in Silhouette of Success by letting you share a little bit of, I'm reading through your amazing bio, and it's absolutely phenomenal, which I suspected. I did not know most of it. I knew some of it, but I want you to share all of the great details that you'd like to share with us, and then we'll dive into some other things.
Okay. I was the oldest daughter of a military family. Of course, what that means is you move a lot. So before I even got to college, I went to 15 schools, 4 of them first grade. Starting in El Paso, Texas, and ending up in France. And one of those things, since we're talking about success, that taught me was adaptability, getting along with all kinds of people, but also, as I got later on in my legal career, it also taught me that, you might not like someone, they might not like you, they might be fairly awful to you, but I always knew that, okay, eventually this is going to be over, so you don't feel trapped. And I think sometimes that happens, you feel trapped. Now, let's be honest, some people are trapped in terrible situations, but many of us were so blessed in America that, eventually we could move on. And again, no matter how, some places the kids were great and very accepting, and some places they weren't. But it all ended in about a year or two. So that was a great gift to me. Being raised a military brat was, and that's just what we called ourselves. My dad was in the Air Force, and that was a great gift to me. That really gave me tools and a mindset that really contributed to my success and just some peace of mind when you got yourself in a bad situation. I will always be grateful for that.
That is fantastic. Those are some building blocks that we're fortunate to have. And sometimes perhaps others would look at that like, what you just mentioned about, the 15 schools and the global scope of from El Paso to France. And some might think, stability. But I tell you what, that adaptability, being able to be versatile in real life are probably invaluable skills and treasures that you were blessed with early on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the good thing also was, of course, always had my family, I was with my family, but also military people are just so accepting and helpful because they've all been through it. And they're just the greatest people in the world. Wouldn't take anything for being a part of that. And then I married an Air Force pilot and proceeded to move again, at least for the first part of my husband's career. But yes, like I say, I grew great strength, and there was always good examples there of a very can-do attitude on the part of the families as well as the military members.
It's interesting. So you had the entire journey in your youth and then married into it again. And so then that puts you in the position of being that support system. Were you working at that time? Talk about your law school. When you decided to take that step and then transition in through, where did that take you after you graduated?
I refer to myself so many times as the accidental lawyer because I have no idea where the idea of going to law school came to me. It was just sort of kind of there in high school, kind of there in college. My 15th school, graduated from high school in Colorado Springs, and with 12 or 15 of my classmates, Colorado Springs being a big military town, went down to Texas Tech because so many military people, even if they weren't originally from Texas, if they're stationed in Texas, they go, oh, let's be residents of Texas, and because you have to pick something. So a whole bunch of us went down to Texas Tech or other Texas colleges. And towards the end of, I graduated from high school in 65, and towards the end of when I was at Tech, they started a law school there. And so that really kind of piqued my interest. But then, like I said, I graduated, went to work as a newspaper reporter, went back to Colorado Springs, although by that point in time my parents were gone. Then I married and proceeded to follow my husband around. And in those days, military wives had a hard time finding a job. So I'd work a little here and work a little there until we got to Guam, in which case I got drafted into being teaching. Somebody, arrived at my door, knocked on my door, and said, we understand you have no small children in the home and you have a college degree, and we need you in the classroom. And I went, okay. Luckily, have I mentioned how wonderful, military families are? Luckily, in my husband's squadron was a woman who was a very experienced teacher, already teaching, and she took me under her wing, and I learned about lesson plans and writing a good test, and teaching on Guam was wonderful. I mean, I had kids there from all across the Orient. Some of them, they'd had a few weeks of TESOL teaching English to speakers of other language, and then the school would pair them up if they spoke Mandarin Chinese. They'd put them in the classes with kids who spoke Mandarin Chinese. So, we had all kinds of translators as we did it, but it was a wonderful experience. But that was the 70s, early 70s, and my husband was coming up on his turn to go fly in Vietnam in some form or fashion. And I said, okay, if I'm going to go to law school, he's gone all the time anyway. He was flying in the Air Weather Reconnaissance Service, Typhoon Chasers. I said, I want to go to law school. So I applied to Texas Law, took the LSAT at the University of Guam, and then came back to law school. Had no concept of what I was getting into. Had no family members who were lawyers. Didn't cross my mind how dingy I could be sometimes in my 20s to even go talk to the JAG lawyers and say, oh, what is this legal thing? I just thought that it sounded interesting to me. And like I say, I'd had this idea since junior high. I'm now in my 70s, so I'm too old to be embarrassed by it, but I probably ought to be embarrassed by it. But anyway, that's how that happened. And sure enough, several months later, Fred did end up going at the very end of the Vietnam War. He was actually stationed in flying gunship. He was stationed in Thailand. So he would occasionally catch a hop to come see me. And I saw him about as often in Lubbock from Guam as I did with him on Guam. I graduated in 1977 from law school. He was at that point stationed at Eglin Air Force Base. So I ended up down there. At that point, I had done some work with the JAG office at Eglin and then met a lawyer and worked kind of in real estate in Florida, and particularly condos and that sort of thing. Because we were in Fort Walton Beach, close to Destin, and took the Florida bar as well as the Texas bar. And then in 1978, my husband got out of the regular Air Force. I'd had a baby, and we moved to Texas, and I had a job, my first legal job, was a briefing attorney for an appeals court judge. After that, worked for Tandy, and my husband, about 18 months, 2 years later, joined the Texas Air National Guard unit. So once again, he was gone a lot.
Yeah.
So I got to practice law and be a military wife at the same time. I can't say that I'd recommend that combination if you want a stress-free life.
Yeah. Wow.
But again, because I grew up in it, I think I knew how to be a military wife a whole lot better than I knew how to practice law. Because, like I said, I had no idea. But the Fort Worth legal community was so welcoming. In fact, we picked Fort Worth because several of my law school classmates just had such wonderful things to say about Fort Worth, and they were all true. You know, I love my adopted home. Finally, living someplace for a long time. Just like I say, the Fort Worth legal community, the rest of Fort Worth, just wonderful, wonderful people. You know, it's my adopted home, and I just love it here. I love my city.
Would the term overachiever be appropriate in the most positive light?
Well, there was 1 year because my husband was a pilot, where he gets called up in Desert Storm. I had a third grader and a seventh grader. My mortgage company, for those of you for the listeners who have been around Texas for a while, will remember when we went through some real hard times. Many of our banks failed. So the mortgage company that at that point in time I was in-house counsel with was being sold by the federal government, the RTC, Resolution Trust Corporation, that took over all the assets. We were the first major assets they were sold. And I do believe somewhere in there I had gum surgery. You know, so
you just slide that in your off time, right?
Yes. After having been through that, and then to go backwards between my freshman and sophomore year in law school, my first and second year, 6 weeks after the fall of Saigon at the end of the Vietnam War, I joined my husband in upcountry Thailand. And there were still rumblings of a communist insurgency, although the Thais weren't having any of that, having been free people for 800 years. They were not interested in any of that. But all around them, Laos and Vietnam and what have you, it was uncertain times. And then, but really the scary thing in Thailand was we called them one-step snakes, two-step snakes, and three-step snakes. And that's how many steps you got to take, or you fell over dead if they bit you. So, again, going back to being raised as a military child, was you learn from your experiences. You are in it there immediately, and you learn from it. And so when I actually got out and started practicing law in 78 back in Fort Worth, there weren't a lot of women lawyers. And yes, there was prejudice. It was very hard. Had I wanted to go to work for a big law firm, I doubt that I would have been hired, although I was the first woman lawyer Tandy Corporation hired. You've been through a war zone, and and mates, and then at the end of that summer, been thrown out of Thailand. The Thais were so polite about it, but they were like, okay, yeah, we're withdrawing from CISO, and so all of you there can go home. So I did. It's like sometimes some lawyer, particularly from Dallas, bless their little heart, would take a run at me, and I'd look at him and I'd think, you're not a poisonous snake. I've been called worse by better.
Oh, wow. Talk about perspective.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, my.
It's a great perspective.
Wow.
And I would never, and I hope none of your listeners ever hear me deny the very real prejudice that particularly women in the big firms had to endure. But for me, even with my rather odd career, the perspective that I had really insulated me from that, which, considering how much I had going on, like I say, 2 kids, military wife, law practice, that was a good thing.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I was busy.
It's a great segue into one of the topics that we might visit about, and that is exactly what you were just referring to, was as a strong female, which you are, experiencing maybe that challenge in the workplace, and you've seen such a transition in the workplace, and some things have changed dramatically with regards to strong females or female roles in the leadership style position, and then perhaps some things haven't really changed at all. And I've heard you refer to some of the young attorneys that you have mentored, or they look up to you, that I know for sure. But do you ever give advice on that, or what are your thoughts for other young females, or females of any age, really?
Well, whenever I showed up at a new place, but it was also the same thing, and I would show up at a new situation, it was, how can I help? How can I participate? How can I be a part of whatever good thing you're doing? And I've just always believed, it took me a long time to articulate in my mind, describe what it was. I've always believed in investing myself in other people. And there is great value, and people appreciate it if you just show up and do your work and be a part of whatever, be it small or great, enterprise is going on there. And appreciate whatever part the other people are playing. Just because it's different doesn't make it wrong. Their approach may be different than yours. Or maybe they're cranky. Let them be cranky, and just be part of the team. And there was a lot of talk when I was a young women lawyer, and women were really starting, back in the 70s, women were really starting to move into all of the profession and other work about the value that one of the advantages men had over women was they had played team sports much more than women did back in those days. And the value, those lessons in the team sports that the boys would play carried over into the workplace. That was something different than the general experiences of girls growing up. But again, learning from the military's a tribe. You find your place in it, and including in the families. And I'm not talking about the hierarchy of the rank. I'm talking about truly, there are things going on wherever you're stationed, and you need to be doing your part. Because I certainly had the experience as a young military wife and even an older military wife. It's like there's the people that don't do their part, and then something happens, and the military people are sent off, and then the rest of us have to cope with these others who, they don't want to be involved with any of this. But suddenly, they do need it. And it's just very aggravating and annoying. And I just resolved in my mind that I didn't even have to resolve it. When I moved here to Fort Worth, I immediately got myself involved in Young Lawyers and ended up the first woman president of the Tarrant County Young Lawyers Association within, I'm going to say, 2 or 3 years. And I didn't come from a prominent family. I wasn't in a big law firm, but I just showed up and said, how can I help? I think what y'all are doing here is such a good thing, and I want to be a part of it.
You are remarkable. I always knew that, but
but just truly invest yourself in other people. Yeah. And also, of course, one other very valuable lesson I learned growing up in the military is that the military really teaches you respect the office, even if you don't respect the person holding the office. You respect that office, and you conduct yourself accordingly. And that is so valuable. And then some of the people it turned out I didn't like very much, well, come to find out, we got past it.
Yeah.
We got past it. I learned from them. one of the most difficult jobs I had was being the first woman is never fun at Tandy Corporation, but it was the foundation of my success as a real estate lawyer. And I preached that lesson to my sons when they were younger, that that was not a fun period of my life, but boy, did I learn from it. And that's what I'm going to take away from it. I was so blessed and fortunate to have that military background. So isn't it funny, we're talking about my success as a lawyer, but it's really been more about what I learned from the military, hanging out with the military all these years.
Yeah, invaluable life lessons.
Yes.
But the credit, of course, really goes to you for being able to understand yourself and to have that clarity to see the lessons coming at you, or of course, sometimes we reflect back on them, but to have that mindset and pull all of those components from your youth and then into, your young adulthood, and then pull them all together, be able to have that complete toolbox. Because not only now have you looked back and you're sharing some of these examples with us, but over the course of us knowing each other, even in our time, just our short times talking and watching you from afar, you have shared those lessons with multitudes. And we are also blessed because of what you were able to capture for yourself.
Well, I have to say that one of the absolute joys of my entire life has been, I ended up my legal career at the city attorney's office at the city of Fort Worth. And getting to work for the city I loved was, that was so much fun. And I've always been kind of a political junkie. And boy, watching the city council and everything else, that is where the rubber meets the road. I mean, like city council, they can't go to the grocery store without running into constituents.
Right.
Who have opinions and are going to tell them. I left my city badge on one time, and believe me, some little old lady stopped me in the grocery store one evening and lectured me about the new changes to how we picked up garbage, and she was not happy. Anyway, but was to mentor the young lawyers and to teach the young lawyers not just the law, but how it fits into relating to the people and managing your relationships with people, and the glorious concept of managing up. Managing up doesn't mean, or managing your relationships sure doesn't mean you're going to get your way, but again, it greases those wheels, it engenders trust, and you can appreciate them and the burdens that they carry and what they're trying to accomplish too. And again, just to see yourself not as some little lawyer stuck over in a cubbyhole someplace, just, they shove problems at you, you shove paperwork back at them. But that you're part of that team, you're part of that enterprise of moving our city forward. And when you have that big picture, it's a wonderful thing. And to see some of the young women lawyers that I've mentored, and several of them have gone on to really, some great positions, I couldn't be prouder. To just have a piece of that is just, it's just wonderful. It's a joy. It really
fills
is
your heart. Listen to your voice up, Oh,
yeah. It's just, yes, to get that text. I got one a few months ago. I've been here less than a year, but they've already promoted me to be a senior. I've got a big raise. And, that was just wonderful.
Oh, as I say, that's just the berries, right?
Oh, yes.
It's so
yes. Oh, man. That's just wonderful. And, of course, the nice thing the mentoring is, boy, they appreciate you more than your own kids.
Well, there might be some of that going on, right?
Yeah.
But,
but even if my children have age,
yes,
they appreciate me more.
Of course.
I had no idea. I just sort of fell into the job with Tandy, and I worked for a mortgage company, and that was very satisfying. But I kind of fell into that, and I fell into the job with the city. Like I say, I am not the one to ask advice about planning a career because, like I say, I had so much going on. It was just, please, Lord, don't let me commit malpractice today. That was just, I'm so grateful for my job at the city because, again, just the fun of sitting there watching the city council meetings and being able to drive past buildings that I had a small part, but a part of getting constructed. I mean, to see tangible things like that. Like I say, it puts a big old smile on me.
Well, I do think of you so very often for many reasons, but there is that too. Driving down different streets, I think, I know she was a part of that, or there's that building. Yeah, it just tickles me. It's just, again, it's that that dotted line connection, just to say, I know Vicki had a hand in that, and so I can't imagine just the absolute fullness of your heart when you get to really, stop and pause and reflect back and think of those. So I'm so proud of you. Well, so Vicki, if you could perhaps pick maybe a topic or a question that maybe most women ask you that you talk about the mentoring, is there ever a specific or a general topic that they want to talk with you about or look for your advice on?
Oh, gosh. Particularly as a young lawyer, you get very frustrated when they don't take your advice. How do you handle that? Is, I guess, that's the one in the final years of my career. And it's like, see the big picture. Understand the trade-off that the other people, your internal clients, as it were, at the city, see the big picture. What are they trying to accomplish? What are the pressures on them? Take the long view. Take the long view. Don't personalize it. If they're smart, they're going to remember what you said, and it'll come.
Right.
It will come. But in the meantime, keep that relationship. You don't have to like them. They don't have to like you. Doesn't matter. Keep that relationship of the respecting the office. That means the position they're in and the position you're in. Keep that respect there for them and what they do.
It's applicable, isn't it? It's applicable across the board. It's to have that commonality.
Yes. We're all on the same team, and they bear the burden of the blowback much more than the lawyers do. So, like I say, just take the long view. And, of course, that comes with age as well.
Being able to step back, pull your emotions out of the situation, and it's a skill to learn and to nurture. Because you're right, it doesn't always come out as we want it to, but hindsight and practice, and like you said earlier, you learn your lessons quick the first time. Right?
But it's also, kindness has an aspect in there, is to let people know, I care about you. And, of course, one of the pleasures being one of the older lawyers from the time I was hired is I care about you. I care about your professional development. I used to talk to my internal client, and I used to say to them, now, when all of you become city managers, I'm going to be real proud of you. But this is why I say these things, and particularly if it's something they didn't particularly like or want to hear. But these are my concerns in that. And, you have to do what you have to do, but try to come from a position of kindness. And, you can also talk about teamwork. We're on the same team, and I want you to succeed. Because when they succeed, you've done your job.
Such diplomacy in how you present that and reframe, right, to help.
Yes.
To help really train and teach. And that's poetic. I love that. How would you, at the end of perhaps a really challenging or emotionally exhausting day or situation, how would you maybe recharge and reset your mind and go back at it? You hear start every day at zero, or that was yesterday. Clean slate. How would you do that for yourself that maybe would help somebody else listening?
Try to first sort out my emotions. Did they push a hot button of mine? Because we all have hot buttons. If there's something that I'm putting too much of my emotion into it, start with myself, but also be honest to completely decompress. Go read a murder mystery or watch a TV program, Or, if it was really ugly, I'd pull out my Bible and read some Psalms. Yeah. That was, because sometimes it did get really ugly. And sometimes, a few of those times, believe me, even in my declining years, I'd have a piece of the ugliness. And I just had to, sometimes it takes a while to work your way out of that. All you can do is control yourself. That's easy to say, and I think most people know it. Boy, it's hard to put in practice.
Amen to that. Speaking of the Psalms.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Woo, yes. Wow. You tickled me with the murder mysteries. Do you have a favorite author or genre of book that you enjoy that you'd want to share?
I love Michael Conley, but I also read Ellis Peters wrote a beautiful series of murder mysteries, believe it or not, set in the 1100s in England. The Brother Cadfael, and I may be butchering that name, Cadfael, that whole series of books that she wrote. In fact, BBC did a short series on him, and those are beautifully written, but also a wonderful story. But oh my, people were still people. I don't like the real gory stuff, but the thrillers and that sort of thing, no, that's too much. But like I say, Michael Conley and the Harry Bosch series is about as dark as I want to get. But,
I'll have to check those out. Thank you for that. Yes. Great. Strong referral. Mm-hmm. Well, Vicki, in keeping true to providing intentional inspiration, and as we wrap up our visit today, is there a key piece of go-to advice that you would want to share with our listeners? Be completely transparent, and you can hear the paper shuffling. I have now 4 pages of notes. Just so there's so much intentional inspiration and advice that you shared. But is there something that has been shared with you or that you truly is your go-to advice for somebody? And I know that might cover the gamut of topics, but
invest yourself in people.
Yeah.
The biblical phrase for that is cast your bread upon the waters. But I am astounded at looking back at my life and stuff that when I did that with a pure heart, not because I wanted something out of them, but because it's important to me to invest myself in them. Sometimes years later, it would come back to you. Or someone completely different came along and helped me when I was at a bad place or did not know what to do. So invest yourself in people.
Thank you for that. That is so beautiful. Thank you for that. Is it fair to say that I'm looking at a photo that you have officially retired? So is it 43 years as a lawyer? Is that correct?
Yes, but I sold my house and I moved. And, of course, I was still working full-time for 3 years. And so things are pretty chaotic around here on the home front. And I'm going to sort some stuff out, but I'm hoping to perhaps find some part-time work in a couple of months or a year or so. Because I really enjoyed what I did for the city. And it was sort of a, unique little niche, but like I say, I really enjoyed it. And I'm hoping to do some of that. But we'll see. Like I say, I refer to myself throughout my career as the accidental lawyer. So, I may accidentally fall into something, and then again, it might not happen. But that's kind of what I'm hoping. So, yes, I'm retired from the city officially full-time, but, I'm hoping there's a little part-time in there.
But ... is what they say, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, you are an absolute, and I mean this with the utmost respect and sincerity, you are a treasure, and it is a gift that we ever connected. You have such a special place in my heart, and I would be remiss if I didn't take this moment for our family and for all of those other families to definitely thank you for your service and all the way back to your family. And I know your sons, So thank you for that. You are a stellar example to us all.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Well, absolutely. So, Vicki, as we close out, is there a resource or a contact information that you would want to share right now, or should we keep that as a ... until we see what your next step is for anyone to follow you in your continued success?
The ... is where I'm at right now.
Okay. Well, we will circle back and do any updating that we need to. Fair enough?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Well, Vicki, thank you once again for sharing your silhouette of success with us, and my heart is filled with gratitude at having this time with you.
Well, thank you, Amber.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Silhouettes of Success podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out and join us for all the new episodes. We are here for you and with you. We encourage you to share this podcast on all your socials and pass on the light to help illuminate another silhouette of success. Amber would love to hear from you, and you can find her on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, or head over to amberweitzer.com. Let's connect. Help us all shine and leave us a review too. To find out the latest ways to inspire your heart, ignite your mind, and gain actionable insights, subscribe at amberweitzer.com. We are honored, humbled, and full of joy that you've tuned in. Remember, you are exactly where you need to be, right here with us. This is the Amber Weitzer podcast, Silhouettes of Success.